This is a description of my personal experience with a 2024 Off-Grid Expedition 3.0 trailer that I purchased new in June 2024. The trailer is marketed as a high-quality, tough, off-road capable, all-metal, teardrop-style, queen-size sleeping trailer with external fold-out kitchen facilities with a 2-burner gas stove, a wash basin with hot and cold water, an optional furnace, a fridge freezer, hot water shower, a 270-degree rapid deployment awning, and a roof rack that can carry a load of 1,000 pounds. That can be a rooftop tent, a kayak, a canoe, a storage box, or anything else. I've now traveled 5,000 kilometers on all sorts of roads, from highways to gravel roads of varying quality, and spent 25 nights in the trailer in varying weather conditions. So this is my experience and personal opinion on whether the trailer justifies its premium 60,000 Canadian dollar price tag. I looked for all the information about the trailer that I could get before purchasing because it is a big investment, but I've still ended up learning a lot and wishing I'd known certain things beforehand. So this is a lengthy description in 3 parts of my experience that may be of use to anyone also looking for as much information as possible before purchase. Just for background, and these could be similar considerations to many folks considering the trailer, I enjoy the simplicity of tent camping, but it's not as easy traveling with family and a dog to have to break camp every day, fold up mattresses, stuff sleeping bags, pack up a tent, often in the rain, break down tarps, and then put it all up later in the day again, hoping you find a spot in a campsite that allows tenting. So I looked enviously at the folks with small 4x4 Class B campervans that could just drive in and out of camping spots with everything they need contained in the unit. But just the empty shell van would cost me around 70,000 Canadian dollars minimum, and then a build could go as high as 60,000 Canadian dollars. Obviously you can build it for yourself for much less than that, but I don't have the time for a second job. So a budget would be closer to 150,000 Canadian dollars for a rough road capable camper van. I travel thousands of kilometers every year on gravel roads, but I don't do any serious off-roading. I walked into the local Travelland RV and a nice pre-produced Sprinter van cost 250,000 Canadian dollars. That's a small van between these huge fifth wheels with full kitchens, multiple rooms, bigger bathrooms than my house has, which only cost a fraction of that price. And then I was frightened by stories of engines needing replacement at 70,000 kilometers and mechanical issues. When you have so much invested in a build, you need long-term reliability if you're going to invest so much. I was also concerned about stories I would hear about Mercedes and its warranty requiring a limit of 5% biodiesel being used, which is not always available. Also, long waits for service spots or parts due to few dealers. The Ram ProMaster is front-wheel drive, and I sometimes get stuck with four-wheel drives or all-wheel drives on the roads that I have traveled. So basically the Mercedes Sprinter and the Ford Transit all-wheel drive are the options I would be looking at. And then suddenly when I saw an off-road capable teardrop trailer that I could sleep in areas that are sometimes limited to hard-sided campers because of bear problems, that I could also potentially park in a normal garage and could camp anywhere and just drive away in the morning. Something that contains everything I need in terms of cooking and heat and shower, and that at a cost less than just the conversion cost of a camper van, without the need for a new vehicle that would hopefully also outlast my vehicle. Suddenly a trailer of 60,000 Canadian dollars seemed a bargain. Now you can get a very nice RV for that price that you can stand up in and cook in and do everything inside it, but it can't necessarily fit in your garage. It can't always go necessarily on very bad roads. So I was attracted to a teardrop trailer that can go on rough roads and get towed by my vehicle, which is not a good towing vehicle. So to get to the point, is the Off-Grid Expedition 3.0 worth its price of around 60,000 Canadian dollars? It is marketed as a premium quality built all metal trailer made from non-corroding long-lasting aluminum on a steel frame chassis. Now when you ask yourself if it's worth the investment, there are two ways that I would see it. Firstly, if it serves its purpose well of providing a hard-sided sleeping shelter with storage space and all the camping accessories like the external kitchen, the fridge, a hot shower, a furnace, electrical power, and you can get it to the beautiful, magical places you want to reach, then you are getting the value you are paying for. If it successfully serves that purpose, it's hard to put a price to it. Alternatively, you can put a price to it and calculate the cost of having the trailer and ask if it is worth it. The first night you camp in it, it's going to cost you 60,000 Canadian dollars. The second night, 30,000. For me, after 25 nights so far this summer, it is costing me 2,400 Canadian dollars per night. To get this down to the cost of accommodation in a 5-star hotel in some exotic place, not to mention the cost of just tent camping, I would need to spend at least 150 nights camping with it. So that may take me 6 years. Will the trailer be durable and last at least that long, or will it be a source of continual added maintenance headaches and expenses that really makes it hard to justify the price per night of use you get from it? For me, I have to add about 250 Canadian dollars per month for storage in a covered unit during the winter when I'm not using it. To state my opinion up front after the summer's experience of ownership, it is a very nice trailer for the purpose it was made for, but there are two main concerns I have that prevent me from unreservedly saying yes, it is worth the cost. The doors leak water and I'm concerned about corrosion. Leaking doors would have been a deal breaker for me had I known about it beforehand. When I winterized the trailer, I already noticed frank rust on components after just 3 months of use. I don't know if that will end up being a problem, but I don't think off-grid trailers have been on the market long enough to say if they will last like Airstream RVs. I looked at all the reviews on the trailer I could find during my research, but unfortunately these two concerns were never mentioned. From my experience, I would suggest if you are interested in this trailer, you should get answers to these two concerns before driving a trailer away from the dealership, because I would certainly have considered it worth it otherwise. The first is I have a major problem with water intrusion past both cabin door seals when camping or driving in the rain. That results in a wet mattress, which to me is totally unacceptable. With a mattress taking up the entire floor space, you cannot shift it away or get away from water leaks around the doors. The trailer is failing a most basic function of a protected dry sleeping space, and I have to carry a tent for when the mattress needs to dry out. I think the design of the doors make them inherently prone to water intrusion, mostly because they only have a single rubber seal, unlike the doors of some RVs and cars. I do not find any mention of that in any of the reviews I saw, but it is clearly a problem affecting other people, because during emails with Off-Grid Trailers warranty department, they send pictures of how they are attempting to solve the problem with added seals being glued on, which I think is unacceptable for a premium priced trailer. It should be addressed before the units are sold and not expect new owners to try patch repairs themselves or replace brand new door seals. There are some problems with the design when it rains. Firstly, the Maxxfan cover is designed to be able to be opened in the rain because it still covers and protects the fan opening. That mostly works, but if it rains hard, water does splatter up under the cover from the roof and drip into the cabin. So be aware that you may have to close it in hard rain. There is a rubber seal under the cover which is effective at sealing against any water when it is closed, as well as preventing dust from getting in when driving. It's not a problem if you have to close it, but then you do need to ventilate the cabin by having the windows open. The problem is that you cannot open the windows in the rain without letting water in. The 270-degree awning is over the door, but unfortunately does not help protect the window on that side because water runs off the roof under the awning and over the gutter above the door, especially via the light mounting, and runs directly down over the window. Also, when I camped in strong winds, I could not always deploy the awning, so there's no real way of getting any ventilation in the cabin when it rains, and then condensation will accumulate. A bigger problem is that water from the roof runs under the awning and down the side of the trailer directly into the opening around the door and then leaks straight past the rubber door seals. The door has a double latch mechanism designed to ensure tight sealing of the door against the rubber seals. The first push you give closes the door, but you have to give another hard push to fully engage the pin and striker. That's easy to do from the outside, but it's actually nearly impossible to fully engage the latch from the inside, no matter how hard you pull on the handle, which is fortunately very tough, so you can really reef on it. It's simple enough though to open a window and the mosquito screen and then just stick your hand out and pull the door shut from the outside to fully engage the latch. To reduce water drainage around the doors, I have tried to tilt the trailer more tongue up to drain the roof water backwards, but the water from the gutter above the doors then runs back to the back of the door where there is no gutter. If I tilt the trailer more tongue down, the bigger surface area of the roof drains forward and more water runs off towards the doors. Note there is a water gutter above the door and on the front side of the door, but not on the back side of the door. I consistently had a wet mattress when it rained. When I washed the unit after use, I would also consistently get water into the cabin, and that was with a sprinkler, not a pressure washer. When I tested it with a sprinkler outside the door, you can see that within a minute water would get past the rubber seals and leak into the cabin. There was not one discrete spot in the rubber seal that leaked, but water leaks past the whole length of the seals on both doors. Off-grid trailers sent me instructions to shift the pin of the latch mechanism to get a tighter seal of the door, which I did without it solving the problem. The door really needs an outer plate that overlaps the door opening, and then a second seal could be put under the panel, but that would of course require a hinge mechanism that allows the door to have more clearance when swinging out. There is a second source of water intrusion via the door. Water runs from the roof into the space around the door directly towards the latch area of the door, which is outside of the rubber seal. Water drains into the latch and into the door and then leaks out the inside from the access ports of the latch as well as around the handle of the door. You can see how water enters into the door from the latch, which I'm sure it is meant to do since there are drain holes at the bottom of the door for the water, but it also leaks out around the access panels and the handle of the door towards the inside of the cabin. On a very cold day in strong wind, I could also feel some wind coming in the door through this route. Now that's not a huge problem since I could go and seal any opening on the inside panels of the door with silicone sealant. This is the picture that off-grid trailers sent me of what has been done on other units to help to direct water away from the latch mechanism. I ended up also buying plastic RV gutters from Amazon and installing them on the side of the door which doesn't have any gutter, as well as on the side of the roof above the doors to try to prevent water from the roof from draining towards the doors. It still does not solve the problem of some water ingress around the rubber seals though. The doors really need double seals like on a car door. Off-grid trailers sent me new seals to install, but the problem is the design, not the seals. All the single rubber seals allow some water in. That occurs at the front storage box, the side boxes, the rear storage hatch. The front storage box as well as the side boxes for the fold-down kitchen and the shower are not meant to be airtight. They all have drainage holes or vent holes. Small amounts of water certainly can get into all of these boxes, but it's not just via the drain holes. I always see a little bit of water on the inside of the rubber seals after driving in the rain. Remember that road spray is thrown up at like 100 kilometers per hour. The rear storage shelves generally stay dry except for another design peculiarity. If you at all have the roof tilted to allow the water drainage backwards rather than towards the doors, then water does drain over the back of the roof and down the rear storage hatch door. The door also has a single rubber seal which works well except for a few drops of water that gets past the seals. This door has a second rubber seal on its top edge as seen here. It does not make tight contact with the hatch frame, but it does help divert some of the water from the roof away. The problem is that some of the water does get past it, but then it pulls between that seal and the inner rubber seal. That area is exactly where the edge of the inner aluminum panel runs along the top side of the door. That panel is not sealed along its edge and water drains into the rear hatch door. When you open the rear hatch, the water runs back inside the panel and drips down the edge where it got in, right over the rear shelves where you are working. The rear hatch handle and lock mechanism itself is also not totally waterproof. Water will get in through the lock and tends to splash up against the guard on the inside of the shelves. The little slider over the keyhole on my unit also stopped working within the first 2 weeks I had the trailer. Normally when you pull out the key it slides over to cover the opening, and that also doesn't help to prevent water from coming in the lock mechanism. Note that there is an extension to the awning that you can tie up over the gap between the back part of the awning and the rear hatch to keep rain from coming through that gap. It is removable and can be slid in over the area of the fridge if you rather want the rain protection there. Also be aware that you will get a fair amount of dripping from the underside of the awning when it rains. Even when fully staked out between the poles to prevent pooling of water on the top of the awning, condensation will form on the underside and drip down under the awning rather than running down to the edge because of its relatively flat profile compared to, say, a tarp that gets angled quite steeply. Water also leaks out of the screws on the side of the roof rails and down the side of the trailer under the awning. The bottom edge of the side rail of the roof is sealed, but it is not sealed on the roof side along the side of the roof. So water runs in between the side rail and the trailer body and then drains out via the screws. I would of course worry that it does not just drain out externally but also into the wall of the trailer, risking galvanic corrosion, which is the next major concern that I have. I did end up sealing the junction of the side rails with the roof myself. I found it hard to find a dry place under the trailer or under the awning to store stuff like shoes, and that is why I think having the doors also leak water is a big disappointment. Unless you live in Saskatchewan, where Off-Grid Trailers manufacturing plant is located, any warranty repair work you will have to do yourself or use another RV repair company. When I asked for help about the water leaks after trying to reset the door pin for a tighter seal, Off-Grid Trailers sent me new replacement door seals and sealant to glue them in, but they ended up being too short to fit around the doors, so I took it to an RV repair facility and they removed the existing seals, which were still new, and reinstalled them with a junction point of the seal on the bottom of the door rather than midway up the hinge side. So water will have to run upwards to get over the seal. They also installed a second rubber seal on the hinge side of the door up to the top of the door. Extending it further was problematic because the door would tend to shear off the seals as it closes if they're just glued on. Rubber seals were also put around the pin area to direct water away from the striker area of the door latch. That tends to easily get sheared off as well. The trailer now passes the sprinkler test, but water will still get in if you use a pressure washer. I'm afraid that I am always going to have the risk of some water ingress. Ideally, there should be an overlap of the door outer panel over the edge of the door opening so that there are two compressed seals just like on a car door. I hope Off-Grid Trailers changes the design. To their credit, they did follow up regularly to hear how I was progressing to fix the leaks and then refunded me for the expenses at the RV repair shop to reposition the seals and add the extra new seals. The second concern I have is corrosion. I see some rust or corrosion on spots of the trailer after only 3 months. Off-Grid Trailers mentions the all-metal construction with non-corrosive aluminum on the steel chassis as a major advantage, similar to Airstream RVs, which last a very long time. There is no wood to rot, but there is a lot of metal to corrode. If you are to get your money's worth from such a premium price trailer, then it must last. What I noticed on the trailer though is that there is widespread use of steel screws and bolts through aluminum panels and between the aluminum structures and steel chassis without consistent isolation between the steel and aluminum components. There are uninsulated steel bolts and washers throughout the aluminum structure of the trailer, as well as steel bolts between the steel chassis and the aluminum plates of the trailer cabin, the aluminum plate of the bottom of the trailer, and the aluminum of the front storage box, without any insulation or vapor barrier between the different galvanic potential materials. Now that will result in galvanic corrosion in my mind, which is a physical phenomenon at the contact points between dissimilar metals. All the aluminum trailers I see that have steel bolts through them without any insulation form galvanic corrosion around those bolts, and then the aluminum cracks and leaks water after a few years. There are specific steps needed like rubber or plastic washers, vapor barriers, and plastic sleeves around bolts contacting dissimilar metals to totally avoid direct contact between two dissimilar metals and subsequent galvanic corrosion, which I do not see on the Expedition 3.0. I'm not an expert at trailer manufacturing, but I understand some physics, which I did at school and university, so I did email Off-Grid Trailers before purchase asking about galvanic corrosion, which is the enemy of aluminum trailers. And they did reply saying, to prevent galvanic corrosion, we use grey silaprene at the interface between the primed and powder-coated steel chassis and the aluminum body, which will stop and prevent any corrosion. Now, I found that to be partly true, but I do not see that silaprene is consistently present, and there are clearly areas of direct contact between the aluminum structure and the steel chassis, with numerous steel screws or bolts through the aluminum structures without any barrier, which they didn't mention in their reply. I'm seriously concerned that galvanic corrosion will occur before I reach the point where the cost of the trailer makes my camping nights drop under like 400 Canadian dollars per night. Galvanic corrosion is just a form of accelerated corrosion. It's an electrochemical process that occurs between two metals of different electrochemical activity. The more passive metal, steel in this case, drives the corrosion of the more active metal, the aluminum. The process continues until the more active metal is completely gone, in other words, a hole in the aluminum around the steel bolt, or the electrical connection is broken. On this trailer, steel screws or bolts are found throughout the structure, holding aluminum parts together or aluminum parts to the steel frame, without isolation consistently being present throughout the structure. Exposure to moisture, especially salt from the roads up north here, will result in the aluminum corroding away around the steel screws until they fall out or leak water through the eroded holes around the screws. Electrolysis occurs where the more active metal, the aluminum, works like an anode next to the more passive metal, which functions as a cathode. Electrodes are drawn from the more active metal because of their differing potentials. Stripping these electrons from the atoms of the active metal make them more positively charged and highly reactive. They want to form more stable compounds like metal oxides and hydroxides, which is what we see as crusty corrosion or white rust on aluminum. So how would one normally prevent galvanic corrosion? The options are to insulate the differing metals. Simple paint or coating layer will rarely last on a trailer, subject to consistent high and low frequency vibrations. A plastic sheet on the steel frame or a rubber lining under a washer or a plastic sleeve around a bolt is ideal. You can use similar metals with less than a 0.2 volt difference in galvanic potential, or use a spacer metal that sits between the potential of the two metals you are joining. For example, here's a grounding connection to the steel trailer chassis. An aluminum plate is fixed with a steel screw to the steel chassis. This area is consistently exposed to road spray. You cannot put a rubber or a plastic spacer between the two differing metals because it needs to conduct electricity. So you can look at the galvanic series and then you can see that cadmium is between aluminum and steel. If you put a cadmium spacer between the aluminum plate and the steel chassis, then you do not have metals with more than 0.2 volt difference, potential difference, and galvanic corrosion will not occur, or at least it'll be very slow. The other thing you need to do is prevent moisture from connecting the two metals. You can coat either the anode or the cathode to prevent electrical connection. For example, galvanized steel is steel coated with zinc to prevent galvanic corrosion or rust. The problem with coatings like galvanized steel or anodized aluminum is that they wear off. Just a powder coat or a paint coat on a trailer subject to high and low frequency vibrations will not prevent contact of dissimilar metals. There's also no way you can fasten down a bolt with threads through two metals, even if they are coated, without abrading the paint coat in the hole with the thread of the screw or the bolt. The smaller the contact surface between the dissimilar metals, the greater the galvanic corrosion. Here is an example of what I'm afraid of. This is from an aluminum boat. This looks like the bottom of the trailer with an aluminum plate, and the aluminum plate is on the steel chassis. Here a piece of steel was attached to the aluminum plate with a steel bolt, and you can see how galvanic corrosion occurred around the bolt opening and on the contact surface between the aluminum and the steel. Here are multiple sites on my trailer where steel screws are directly put through aluminum or between the steel chassis and aluminum parts without washers or isolating sleeves. The front storage box sits directly on the steel chassis without any silaprene or any vapor barrier between the two. All the bolts and washers are steel directly through the painted aluminum. These steel fasteners in the shower box, which constantly gets water in it, already seem to have white corrosion on my unit after just 3 months. Here there is some silaprene visible between the walls and the chassis, but clearly there are areas where there is close contact or direct contact without isolation. It looks like a bead of silaprene was put on the chassis when the structure gets compressed down, and there's varying degree of spread, and it doesn't cause consistent isolation between the two. On the underside, the steel crossbeams do not consistently have silaprene isolating the steel from the aluminum bottom plate, and stones will get in and abrade away the powder coat on the steel chassis, and water will get in and start galvanic corrosion. So I wish I had gotten some expert opinion about the risk of galvanic corrosion on the Expedition 3.0 before investing, and I suggest you maybe do so, but certainly don't just get put off by my concerns, since I'm not a construction expert. I have this Delta kayak with an aluminum rudder with metallic cables and stainless steel bolts. I don't know what the washers are made of or how the bolts are coated or treated, but after 10 years in lots of seawater and freshwater, there's not a spot of corrosion, so it's clearly possible to prevent it. Hopefully the same will apply to the trailer, but while winterizing I did already see this rust on the fridge bracket, which is not exposed to any moisture. I have no idea what this is made of, since it is not ferromagnetic, so it could be aluminum. So I hope this was contamination from somewhere else during production. Also on this screw and on the chassis at the grounding bolt. And this trailer is only 3 months old. I asked the opinion of a local aluminum trailer supplier after I bought the trailer, and he says in the rust belt with salted roads, nothing prevents common rust or galvanic corrosion. He showed me badly eroded bolt sites on a number of aluminum trailers. He also showed me his personal trailer of 12 years old without any corrosion. He just strictly does not use it in the winter and washes it down regularly. That is something that may need consideration. Time will tell how susceptible this trailer is to corrosion, and being so expensive, I decided I'm not going to use it in the winter on salted roads. But I do drive on lots of gravel roads in summer where calcium chloride and magnesium chloride is used for dust suppression, and that is equally corrosive. I'm probably being unrealistic to hope no corrosion will occur. Something to note is that the roof is made from a single aluminum sheet without any bolts of any kind through it. There are anchor points welded on, but nothing goes through the sheet, which is a very good design feature. A review of the trailer features will be done as a part 2.